It started on a sunny Saturday morning, the kind of day where the sun feels just right, not too hot, not too cold. I had my tools ready, soil freshly delivered, and my mind set on finally fixing up the overgrown mess behind my fence. I'd been putting it off for weeks. Life, work, errands, they always got in the way. But not today. Today was mine, so I got to it. Pulled on my old gardening gloves, grabbed a rake, and stepped into the yard shirtless. Now, before anyone gets the wrong idea, I wasn't trying to show off or anything like that. It was just hot, and it felt good. The sun on my back, the breeze brushing over my skin. The freedom of not being stuck in a sweaty t-shirt while digging holes and trimming hedges. It made sense. I was halfway through pulling weeds when I heard it. That sound. You know the one. The slow creak of a sliding glass door that usually means trouble. Then, the voice, sharp, cold, disapproving. "Excuse me," she said, louder than needed. I turned, already knowing who it was. Karen. I didn't actually know her real name. Everyone just called her Karen because, well, she acted like one. She lived 2 doors down, always peeking through blinds, always having something to say about everyone else's business. It didn't surprise me when she marched up to the edge of her lawn with a scowl carved deep into her face. She pointed. "This is a neighborhood. There are families here. You can't just walk around shirtless like it's some beach." I blinked. I was standing in my own backyard. She wasn't even directly next to me. There was a whole house between us. I wasn't blasting music. I wasn't swearing. I was just gardening. I tried to stay polite. "It's hot. I'm on my own property." "That doesn't matter," she snapped. "There are rules. You're setting a bad example." I wanted to laugh. Honestly, a bad example. For pulling weeds without a shirt on. I told her I wasn't doing anything wrong, and if she didn't like it, maybe she shouldn't be spying on people's backyards. That didn't sit well. She huffed, called me immature, and stormed off. I shrugged and went back to digging. But something about the encounter stuck with me. Not because it bothered me, it didn't, but because of how absurd it was. The idea that someone thought they could dictate how I garden in my own space. That they felt entitled to tell me what I should or shouldn't wear, or not wear, when I'm sweating under the sun, quietly tending to my plants. That night, while scrolling through social media, I saw a funny meme about homeowners associations and their ridiculous rules. And suddenly, the idea came to me. What if I leaned into it? What if I made a whole thing out of this? Not to be petty, not to start drama, but to have some fun, embrace a little freedom, and maybe make people smile or at least roll their eyes in amusement. So I posted, "Karen said I couldn't garden shirtless. So I'm starting a Shirtless Garden Club. Membership is free. Shirts are optional. BYO shovel." At first, it was just a joke. A few friends laughed. Some replied with thumbs up emojis, others with laughing faces. But then something weird happened. People started sharing the post. People I didn't know started commenting. Strangers messaged me asking where they could sign up. Someone even offered to make a logo. Within 2 days, I had over 200 likes and a dozen people actually serious about showing up. And so, the Shirtless Garden Club was born. The first gathering was more hilarious than anything else. 3 of my college buddies showed up, shirtless, sunscreened up like lifeguards. One of them brought his cousin, a guy who worked at a landscaping company. We didn't have an agenda. We just cleaned up the yard, planted some tomatoes, and pulled some overgrown ivy off the fence. It was fun, it was productive, and it was completely harmless. But the best part, Karen watched the whole thing from behind her curtains. She didn't say a word this time, but I could feel the glare. Her energy practically radiated from across the lawn. That evening, I uploaded a short clip of our club at work, not mocking anyone, not being inappropriate. Just a bunch of guys in shorts and hats, digging in the dirt, laughing, building a little garden community. The clip got more views than I expected. A local page reshared it. A garden center reached out, offering free mulch for the next meeting. The momentum was building. People started tagging me in their own shirtless gardening pictures from around the country. Even a woman from Arizona posted a Shirtless Garden Club Ladies Edition photo. It was going viral, in the smallest, weirdest, most perfect way possible. Suddenly what started as a tiny neighborhood squabble became a goofy grassroots movement. And honestly, it felt kind of great. Not because I wanted attention, but because it reminded me that sometimes, the best way to deal with ridiculous negativity is to respond with joy, with silliness, and with confidence in your own space. Of course, not everyone was a fan. Some people thought we were just being immature. A few comments online said we were looking for attention. But most of the responses were lighthearted, supportive, and just excited to see something fun in a world that often takes itself too seriously. Karen didn't confront me again, but I noticed she started keeping her windows closed during our weekend meetings. One Saturday, I even saw her husband wave from the porch. It made me wonder, maybe he secretly wanted to join too. And so we kept going. Week after week, we met up. Sometimes it was just a few of us. Other times, more people came. We started bringing food, setting up a cooler, playing music quietly in the background. The garden transformed from a messy backyard project into something beautiful, a community, space born from rebellion and rooted in humor, and it was only just the beginning. By the third week, the Shirtless Garden Club wasn't just a weekend activity, it was becoming a tradition. More guys from the neighborhood started stopping by, some out of curiosity, some just looking for something fun to do. And yes, they all showed up shirtless. There was something strangely unifying about it. No one cared what your body looked like. No one judged. You showed up, got some dirt under your nails, and shared a laugh. We had all kinds of people now. Jeff, who worked nights at the post office, came by on his Saturdays off. Pete, a retired firefighter, started bringing his own tools. Even Marcus, Karen's next-door neighbor, started helping plant new herbs and built a small raised bed with recycled wood. He told me quietly one afternoon, "She hates that I'm here, but this is the most relaxed I've felt in years." It was amazing to see how something that started as a sarcastic joke was now giving people a reason to gather, breathe, and reconnect with something simple. Gardening isn't just about flowers and vegetables. It's about patience. It's about being present. And for us, it was about community. Of course, the story wouldn't be complete without a few more run-ins with Karen. She hadn't spoken to me since that first day, until one morning, when we were laying mulch around the tomato beds, she walked right up to the edge of her yard again, hands on her hips. "So this is what you do now?" she asked, her voice dripping with annoyance. I smiled. "Looks like it. You've turned this place into a circus." I gestured to the garden. "Tomatoes are growing, peppers are in, bees are happy. Looks more like a farm than a circus." She squinted. "This isn't what this neighborhood is supposed to be." That's when Pete, the retired firefighter, stepped up and offered her a cold bottle of water. She stared at it for a second, then turned and left without another word. We laughed, but part of me felt a little sad for her. Here we were, building something small and joyful, and all she could see was disruption. I didn't hate her. I didn't even want to argue. I just wished she could understand how harmless it all really was. A few days later, something unexpected happened. I got an email from a small gardening magazine. They wanted to do a short feature on the unconventional community garden that's going viral. I almost deleted it, thinking it was a scam. But it was real. They sent a photographer. We cleaned up the place, made everything look extra nice, and even wore matching gardening gloves for fun. The article came out with the headline, "Where Tomatoes Grow and Shirts Are Optional." People loved it. The post went semi-viral again. This time, some YouTubers picked it up and made reaction videos. Comments flooded in, some saying, "I wish my neighborhood had something like this." Others were just laughing about how Karen unintentionally started a national garden movement. And now, the garden was growing faster than we could keep up with. We expanded from 1 yard to 3. Jeff offered up his back lawn, and Marcus said his fence was coming down next weekend. We added new beds, installed some solar lights, even built a small bench where people could just sit, shirtless or not, and take in the view. But not everything was smooth. About a month into the club's rise, I got a formal notice from the neighborhood association. Apparently, someone filed a complaint about improper attire and unauthorized gatherings. I didn't even have to guess who sent it. Still, it shook me a little. What if they shut us down? Could they do that? I talked to Pete. He looked over the notice and chuckled. "This isn't enforceable. It's a suggestion, not a law. You're on private property. You're not disturbing anyone." But it was more than that. I didn't want this thing to turn ugly. It had been built on lightheartedness, not rebellion. I didn't want it to become some neighborhood war, so I wrote a respectful letter back. I explained that this wasn't some wild party. We weren't violating noise rules. We weren't blocking streets or littering. We were just building a garden together, and if the shirts bothered anyone, we were happy to offer compromises, scheduled hours, a sign, maybe even club t-shirts if it helped. The letter went unanswered, but no one followed up, so we kept going, quietly, consistently, and with more determination than ever. One morning, after a rainy night, I went out early to check on the garden. The smell of wet soil and mint leaves filled the air. I stood there, barefoot in the mud, watching bees move lazily between the blossoms. For a moment, it was just me and the earth. Then I noticed a small card left on the bench. It wasn't signed. It was just a plain white card with a handwritten note. "I don't get it, but I admire what you're doing. Keep growing." I didn't know who wrote it. Maybe someone from across the street. Maybe someone I'd never even met. But that card meant more than they could have known, that it reminded me why we'd kept going. We weren't just planting vegetables. We were planting something else. Acceptance, fun, freedom, a space where people could be themselves. Be silly, be barefoot, or shirtless, or sunburned, and still be welcome. As summer rolled on, we started planning a big end of season cookout. We called it the Shirtless Harvest. Everyone would bring something, a dish made with food from the garden. Marcus was making salsa. Jeff promised his famous cucumber lemonade, and I was roasting tomatoes for pasta sauce. But more than the food, it was the feeling we were celebrating. That sense of shared effort, of laughing together while digging in the dirt. of turning a ridiculous complaint into something meaningful. All because one person told me I couldn't take off my shirt in my own backyard. Sometimes the best stories begin with someone telling you no, then what you do next, that's the part that matters most. The day of the Shirtless Harvest Cookout was warm, bright, and filled with the smell of fresh herbs, charcoal, and grilled vegetables. People arrived with trays, bowls, drinks, and more laughter than I'd heard on this street in years. Pete was already flipping burgers on his portable grill. Marcus set up a table with cut flowers from the garden. Even Jeff brought a homemade banner that said shirtless and rooted in big bold letters. Nobody cared what anyone looked like. Young, old, tall, short, soft-bellied, sunburned. It didn't matter. What mattered was that we had all helped build something from nothing. Something that had started with a petty complaint and turned into a whole movement. Even if just for our block. Music played from a little speaker on the porch. People danced on the grass, barefoot. Kids chased butterflies between the beds of basil and chives. It wasn't loud or rowdy, it was just joyful. Then something completely unexpected happened. Karen showed up. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't dressed for gardening. She wore her usual stiff blouse and pressed slacks, a clipboard in hand. A few people saw her and quieted down, unsure of what was coming. I stood up from where I was sitting near the grill and walked over to greet her. "Hey," I said, trying to sound friendly. She looked around at the tables, the plants, the people laughing. Her face wasn't angry, just confused, maybe even a little tired. "I wanted to see it for myself," she said, not meeting my eyes. "I didn't think it would turn into all this." I nodded. "It surprised me too." She looked down at her clipboard. "You still don't have official permission from the neighborhood committee." "I know." There was a pause, a long one. Then she said something I never thought I'd hear. "But I suppose it's not hurting anything." I blinked. "Excuse me." She cleared her throat. "I still don't like it, but people seem happy, and the garden looks better than the empty lawns that used to be here. So I'm not going to file any more reports." I didn't know what to say. I just smiled and said, "Thank you." She gave me the faintest nod and turned to leave. But just as she was about to go, one of the neighborhood kids, a little girl named Sophia, ran up and offered her a small basket of cherry tomatoes. She had picked them herself. Karen hesitated. Then, almost reluctantly, she accepted them, and, for the first time since this all started, I saw her smile. Just a small one, but it was real. The rest of the day felt even more magical after that, like some weird final piece had clicked into place. There was no speech, no announcement, just quiet agreement. This thing we had created mattered. Over the next few weeks, we kept growing, not just vegetables, but in size. People from other parts of the city started stopping by, asking questions, taking pictures. A local teacher brought her students one morning to learn about planting. A guy from the city's sustainability office reached out to offer free compost deliveries. Even the mayor's social media account shared a picture of us with the caption, "Local community grows more than food, they grow connection." And still, we stayed the same at the core. Every Saturday morning, we were out there shirtless and smiling, weeding beds, planting seeds, and welcoming anyone who wanted to be part of it. Some days it felt surreal. Like, how did this happen? How did a silly argument with a neighbor turn into this? I'd walk through the garden and see all the names attached to each bed. Pete's, Pepper's, Jeff's lettuce row, Marcus's marigolds, even a section the kids called the pollinator palace filled with wildflowers and bee houses. And I realized it wasn't just my garden anymore, it belonged to everyone who had helped make it. We even had a little website now. Nothing fancy, just pictures, updates, and a place where people could sign up to volunteer. Someone made us a logo, a smiling sun with a rake and a six-pack. I didn't ask questions. Then, out of the blue, a major gardening brand reached out. They wanted to send us supplies. Gloves, tools, compost, even a new greenhouse kit. We didn't ask for sponsorship. They just said they loved the story and wanted to help. It was insane. We built the greenhouse together that weekend. And it wasn't just a structure, it was a symbol. A reminder that something planted with sarcasm could grow into something deeply rooted in meaning. Winter came, but the garden didn't stop. We installed cold frames, kept herbs growing inside the greenhouse, and focused on planning for the spring. People kept coming, sometimes just to sit and talk. It had become more than a hobby. It was therapy, friendship, community. And every time I looked out at that space filled with color, laughter, and soil-covered hands, I remembered how it all began. With one sentence, "You can't garden shirtless." And me saying, "Watch me." We never tried to make a statement. We just wanted to live freely, joyfully, and a little wearily. But that freedom gave others permission to do the same. We taught each other how to grow things, not just plants, but trust, confidence, and the kind of relationships that can only bloom when no one's worried about appearances or approval. And that might be the most beautiful harvest of all. The Shirtless Garden Club still exists. We're planning to expand next season. Maybe a community orchard, maybe some raised beds at the school, who knows? All I know is the next time someone tells you you can't, maybe, just maybe, you should start a club. Because sometimes, the best way to grow something amazing is to plant your feet in the dirt, take off your shirt, and get to work. Even if it starts with nothing more than spite and a seed.